Now, this EQMR building is a 24,000 square foot building and was constructed back in 1968. And it houses PAG's maintenance and repair and supply management staff. And generally, the scope of work involves structural repairs to existing cracks and spalls that affect the overall integrity of this building. It also includes renovations such as new office spaces, upgrades to the building like fire protection, electrical, and IT systems. Some obvious tasks for the contractor include painting the exterior and interior walls of the building, which include the beams, columns, as well as applying elastomeric silicone coating on the roof, removing and replacing roof drains, repairing vents and skylights, removing and repairing doors, removing and installing a new chain link fence and gate, removing and replacing existing stair access to the engineering office, renovating the existing facility maintenance offices, which includes a supply office and storage area, as well as a mechanical supervisor office and tool room, building new lounge rooms, as well as a metal stair access to what's going to be a new mezzanine space, building new office spaces, a data room, and restrooms, just to name a few. The contractor will, of course, handle all the structural repairs, as I've mentioned. It'll build a new mezzanine floor for the office spaces with steel beam supports, wood floor joists, fire-rated flooring systems, and building stair access to the mezzanine area. The contractor will also do some plumbing, which involve the removal and disposal of the utility sinks, plumbing fixtures, removal and disposal of existing showers, installation of new utility sinks, plumbing fixtures, water heaters, and emergency eye washes and showers, just to name a few. So the scope of work is pretty vast. I reviewed the contract, which is pretty much the standard construction form that PAG uses for its contractors, and as is regularly the case, the contractor will be subject to liquidated damages for each calendar day beyond the 540 days term that begins from the date of the notice to proceed. In addition, the port may also terminate or modify the contract based simply on a lack of funding. According to PAG, this particular project was identified as a bond-funded project, which has been approved by this commission as well as the Guam legislature. And so I found this contract to be necessary in order to prevent further deterioration of the building, as well as to eradicate the risk of concrete shedding and falling from its structures. It will also ensure a safe working environment for the port's personnel and operations personnel, as well as for the port's tenants and users. The use of bond funding in this instance, Mr. Chairman, is appropriate since this particular project was expressly identified as a bond-funded project in legislation that was approved by the PC and the Guam legislature. Specifically, the legislature found that in order for the port to increase capacity, execute infrastructure development, and undertake port expansion to meet the community's needs, part of such improvements includes repairing the EQMR building. And so based on this record, Mr. Chair, I found that this contract is necessary to support such expansion and modernization, and therefore I recommended approval of the contract.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody from the port want to comment on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dominic Munya. I'm the Deputy General Manager of Operations. Tonight we have some procurement staff, Mark Cabrera, Steve Munya, and our other Deputy General Manager of Administration, Mr. Louis Baza. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and member of the commissioners, and the wonderful work that you put into this, JOPED and the AOJ's report. So if there are any questions that you may have for us, we're here. Thank you for your support. And like JOPED said, this helps the port move with its modernization plan and continue to grow for the years to come. So once again, thank you very much, and we look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dominic. We did receive a letter just today from Felix Berto Alfred Duenas, asking to potentially rebid the job. I don't know if you're aware of that at all, but
No, we didn't read that.
okay. Any thoughts in regards to that? I would think that just in the environment that we're in right now, that pricing is not getting any cheaper, so.
That's correct. We feel, and just like the ALJ's report stated, that the contract that we have currently conforms to local law, and we followed all the procurement activities from beginning to end. So we are not in receipt of that letter as of today. I don't know if any of the other staff has received. We're not aware of any of that. So we'll look out for it tomorrow if it comes our way. But other than that, we just thank you for your support.
Thank you. Any comments from the commissioners? Doris?
Mr. Chair, I'm unfortunately going to have to abstain because my binder didn't come into this. It's blank. So I don't want to vote on something I haven't read. So I'm going to abstain, although Joseph gave a pretty good summary. I like to take the time to absorb, but I don't have anything in my binder, so therefore I will abstain.
Anyone else? It was sent to us electronically also.
I get so many emails that I usually rely on the binder to go over everything.
Considering the condition of the building, where are you housing your maintenance team right now?
They are currently in the building.
In the building?
It's a functioning building as of today, yes.
Mostly, from what has to be done, there's a concern for safety, and OSHA looked at that and allowed it, that we continue to work at that building, and the condition it's in.
Yes.
How's the foundation?
The foundation is, it was built by the military, like Joe said, in the 1960s. So it's a solid building. It's just, the proximity to the salt air, it has taken its toll in the past several years. But we currently have a good facilities maintenance crew that goes around and watches the small every time we see something, and they're on top of it.
It looks like they're going to get out most of that.
Yes, the employees will have to. The employees will have to vacate the building during the construction period.
Yeah, they're just doing that this experience, so we need to move forward with this. I'd like to make a motion to approve issue.
Any second to that motion?
I'll second.
Peter seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Abstain.
Doris abstains. Passes 6-0. Okay. Thank you, Port.
Thank you.
Next item is GPA docket 2207, petition to approve Cabris Unit Number 2 major overhaul. We have a PUC council report and a proposed order.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to talk through my mask here. I think we're okay. Now, in terms of the Cabris 1 and 2 PMC, it's currently held by the contractor that is currently held by tenants. So the GPA is proposing with this petition is that Temis actually perform an overhaul on the Cavers 2 unit, and it's going to cost about $4.9 million. Now, a little bit about this PMC. This was the most unusual PMC when we approved it a few years ago, because what made this PMC different from all the others that preceded it is Temis is supposed to be decommissioning Cavers 1 and 2 completely. And originally, it was supposed to decommission the plant according to the US EPA and GPA consent decree by October the 22nd of 2022. Of course, that was conditioned upon the completion of the 198 megawatt new power plant. The GPA and US EPA revised this consent decree, and essentially GPA is now authorized to continue to operate Cavers 1 and 2 for up to 6 months after the completion of the new power plant. It's currently estimated by GPA that they will be operating Cavers 1 and 2 up until October 2024 under this extension. Now, an overhaul of the Cavers units is recommended about every 5 or so years, and the last overhaul Cavers 2 received according to GPA was 2016. GPA had initially scheduled an overhaul for Cavers 2 in March of 2020. The overhaul could not be conducted due to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. Currently, the need for an overhaul for Cavers 2 is quite significant because Cavers 2 is experiencing more unit outages, mostly form of boiler tube failures and plant safety valve failures and insufficient airflow caused by gas and air duct leakage. Now, currently GPA has scheduled the Tempest the overhaul for September of 2022. The overhaul is expected to take approximately 50 days to complete, and once again, it costs $4.9 million. Now, I found, reviewing this particular petition, that the Cavers overhaul 2 is, cost of the Cavers 2 overhaul is reasonable. So what I compared it to was the last time we approved, this body had approved a Cavers overhaul, their sister units, and basically in 2016, QC had approved the overhaul of Cavers 1 for the cost of $5.1 million. And this particular overhaul is expected to cost $229,398 less than that overhaul that was done about 6 years ago. I also found that the Cavers 2 overhaul is prudent. Now, initially when I looked at this, it's going to have a rather short amortization period. I have to use that term because my former UOG accounting teacher is here, Doris Brooks. So the amortization period is going to only be 2 years versus the 5 years. And so to me, it initially looked like this is a cost PUC should try to avoid if possible. So I tried to look at various alternatives that GPA might have. So I analyzed looking, or basically relying on the former Agreco units, now known as the Giga diesels, but it determined, based on the information provided by GPA, these are not viable alternatives to shutting down Cavers 2 to avoid those $4.9 million overhaul costs. Basically, the Giga diesels only provide about 40 megawatts of diesel peaking power, and they are not designed to run as baseload units. So Cavers 2 is a baseload unit that produces 60 megawatts of power. I analyzed whether or not the 60 megawatt KEPCO solar facility would be a viable alternative to rely on versus incurring this $4.9 million cost. However, The KEPCO solar facility is currently scheduled to be online in May of 2022, and it has no battery storage. It basically only operates from 6 a.m. to about 6 p.m. With full load, not accounting for rain or cloud cover. Basically, it's estimated that the average output of the KEPCO solar facility would be between 12 to 15 megawatts, which is so the KEPCO facility would not be expected to contribute to cover Guam's average 254 megawatt peak load after 7 p.m. So GPA's only other baseload units are the P8 and 9 units, which produce about 88 megawatts. And until the new 198 megawatt power plant is completed, GPA needs both P8 and 9 and Cabras 1 and 2 to meet Guam's peak load demand for energy. Finally, there is the 60 megawatt Hanwha solar farm project, but this is not a viable alternative either to shutting down Cabras 2 because the Hanwha solar farm is not expected to be completed until December of 2023, and once it's operational, it would be subject to the same limitations that the KEPCO solar facility would have. I found that the Cabras 2 overhaul is also necessary. I believe the pictures say it all. This was my other hesitation. I'm quite familiar with these two particular units, having been at GPA's floor council. And they're not in good shape. They're rather old, and essentially, a lot is overdue for the Cabras 2 unit. Hence, and also with the fact that Cabras 1 is down, I believe it's still down. GPA is under increased pressure to complete the Cabras 2 overhaul as scheduled in September 22, because Cabras 1 is still offline waiting for repairs due to the explosion that occurred on February the 4th of 2022. Necessary.
Cabras 1. You remember when that was?
I think Cabras 1 was a couple years ago. But here's the challenge. Even after we do a $5 or $6 million overhaul, what seems to happen is because the units are almost 50 years old, you can have 3 months later, 4 months later, you have a boiler tube leak. Right. And so it's just never going to get better. Even with our overhaul, we fix the leaks that we find in the boiler tubes. We look at the turbine. We try and replace the parts that we can or refurbish them. Most of the time now we're kind of refurbish them, the air preheaters and things like that. But it's just that, time, takes a toll on the equipment that's there, and it's just not getting any better. So
with the overhaul, it doesn't really prevent it from happening.
No.
In the future, so.
No, but if we don't do it, and there's a failure of one of the turbine blade, then that would be a very long period to repair it. So, we can't just wait until something breaks. So that's why we reactor, we have to do the overhaul now. And we looked at our experiences with the last one. Every 5 or 6 years when we open it up, there's always something with one of the turbine blades where it has a crack or it has some little chip in it or whatever that has to be repaired.
So when you overhaul it, you're not overhauling the blades?
No, I mean, all they do is they get out there and they take an x-ray of the blades,
Right.
and then anything that, like the last one for Caver's one that had I guess a crack in it that showed up on the x-ray, they had to remanufacture a new one. But you know, they just look at it, and then even the inside of the turbine itself, they look at the coils and all the parts inside that just to, you know, fix what they need to. I mean, if we had to try and refurbish it to more modern standards, well, that's $10 or $15 million. And then you still have old parts that, you know, I mean, a lot of the gauges are still analog. I mean, you know, we've updated what we can just to keep the safety aspects of it, but there would still be a lot of work associated with that. And as you see, even for Caver's one, you know, we're still looking into the root cause of what caused it to explode. But you know, there's old stuff there. It's just not. It's not built as we expect the new, you know, 198 megawatt combustion turbine unit to be. You know, with all the modern safety features and all the rest of that. So.
Okay.
So is Caver's one now operational?
No, Caver's one is not operational. Caver's one, as we speak, they basically cleaned up the panels that fell off the side of it, and you're saying, well, why was that a challenge? It's a challenge because it has asbestos in it, right? Even if it's been encapsulated. So we had to get the cleanup company to clean up both outside and inside, and then now Chemist is getting the workers ready so that they're going to do 2 shifts basically around the clock until the end of April. You know, taking out the old parts that need to be welded and fixed, and they're gonna restore it so it can be run. So we don't expect it to be running at all until end of April.
So when do you plan to overhaul Caver's 2?
Caver's 2, the overhaul is currently scheduled for September 2022.
Okay, after Caver's 1 gets back on.
Right. So kind of the timeline for that would be. If Caver's 1 comes back up, then we will work on PD8 and PD9. And why is that important? Because we're required under the consent decree to do the diesel conversion. So those need to be done by July 31st. So that's the next step. And then once those are done, then we're scheduling September for the Caver's 2 overhaul.
So without Caver's 1 right now, what is your reserve capacity?
I think the current reserve today was around 32 megawatts. It's not a lot. So if
Anything goes down.
that's right, yeah. So I mean, at one point, as I said, we had every peaking unit running, which is neither efficient nor actually recommended. One of the PD units, I think PD9 had a high temperature on their liner. So first they derated it, and then finally they could not. So, but they're, you know, Mecha's generally pretty good about their repairs. They try and fix it absolutely as fast as they could. But, you know, if you only have 32, megawatts of reserve and a 40 megawatt PD unit goes offline, then there's a challenge.
And usually an overhaul is supposed to last you maybe about, 4 to 5 years?
Yes.
But with the new plant coming on, you expect, are you on target for the new plant to come on?
At this time, we're
You might end up.
it could be delayed a little bit, right? I mean, just because, as in anything, the construction period is expected to be 27 months. But, you know, they have not just the plant, but they're also responsible for the pipeline. So there's 17 miles worth of pipeline. Now, I don't know if you've seen it, but they've already started on removing the old pipeline.
Is that the one that's on Marine Drive right now?
No, that's not us.
Oh,
They've been in some of the other areas. Basically, we are not going through the Navy Sessa Valley anymore. We're going around that. We're going up around Nimitz and kind of around. But other than that, the pipeline will be in the same areas. But what they're doing is for the old pipeline, they're trying to, there was one section where they were a couple weeks ago by, where you go into harvest school. They were there, taking out the old pipes and then taking those away so that they're ready to, start putting in the new pipelines.
Well, again, my question is, where you are today with everything that's happening with the new plant, well, when do you expect to turn it on?
Well, the projected deadline is April 2024. We expect that it due to construction delays, that could slip. And so that's why we may get more out of the campus units than we're planning on. And so that's what we need the thing, because if there is some delay, whether it's a delay in Simmons delivering their big, big units, or even the smaller diesel units being delayed by Cummins for some reason, then we can't give up Campus 1 and 2 or 8 and 9 until then. So I think at the end of the day, we'll get our money out of the overhaul, because we're going to use it until the very last day.
Regarding the delays, do you have any penalties on the daily delays?
So we do. I think it's either $1,000 or $1,500 a day from US EPA. But what we are allowed to do,
From the contractor.
right? Well, and so the contractor has to pay that as well. Right now, there is a provision in for the contractor, both on part of the contractor and us. We can say to US EPA, that there's a force majeure event. In other words, if the generators are delayed getting here, and they're making progress, right? They write us a letter that says our contractor's delayed. We send that to US EPA, and if they agree, then that event is allowed. If they disagree, then we can go to Judge Gatewood and say, Judge, hey, here's our position. Our contractor's been delayed for good reason. EPA doesn't see it as a good reason, but we do. And so, we're asking for you to make a ruling on that. But I think in general, what EPA has told us is that, it has to be documented. In other words, if they say there's a delay from the factory, there better be a letter from the factory saying that the production of these units has been delayed for whatever reason.
So currently, we only have 4 base load generators, 8 and 9, and 2 is down.
That's right.
So now we're at 3, and 2 is in bad shape.
That's right.
LEDs overall.
Yes.
It was 6 years ago when this body finally gave us a green light to go with the new plant. It was in March, right, I think in 2016. And got the green light because there was an explosion at 4 that affected 3. And I had always said that we're living on borrowed time. The plants we have are not just old, but the technology's old. As Graham said, parts are no longer made for these things. But it's really frustrating the amount of opposition we've had at every step to try and get this plant going. When we finally bought the property, you folks approved, we had the money. We had the money, we didn't ask anybody for the money. We didn't say to the legislature, please bail us out, no. We have to go get his zone changed, and that, it sat and sat, and then finally they realized that they actually had put that whole area up there where Okadu is, that whole Harmon, what they used to call the old Harmon Air Force area, and all the properties there were zoned industrial. Because they were under the impression that they're trying to preserve it as a preserve, not do anything like that. So they finally gave a green light. But it's been one delay after another. And I just want to remind everybody that Cavers 1 and 2 are going out. I appreciate Commissioner Brooks's comment and concern, but we have no choice. Hello, is this okay, sir?
It's off.
It's off.
Hello, hello.
It's closer to your, let's go closer.
Okay,
There,
I appreciate the concern. We don't have a choice. We have to spend the money. We don't spend the money, it means still shed. And I want everybody to understand that. It's a very slow process. We went out to try and refund some bonds recently, and Fred was instrumental in helping us try and move that process along with the legislature, but that's sad. That's sad. That's sad and sad, so I don't know why. We just have delay after delay. It seems that
sorry.
it seems that some people, or some of our leaders kind of don't believe us when we keep telling them we're in a crisis. No other way to say it. You don't get that plant built, and we don't build. You know what? If we had built that plant, and the plant was up and running at Okadu right now, and we had all the current renewable energy farms that we have already bid out and are ready to construct, the 60 megawatts at Marble, the 60 megawatts down in Manolo again, and the 50-some megawatts on the military land. We had built that already. We could shut down those plants. We wouldn't need them. I talked to Commissioner Guerrero. He once said to me, Joey, if you build 400 megawatts of renewable energy, what are you going to do with the other generators? And I said, you're right, Pete. Everything else, you can shut it down. You need that one anchor plant. And what you're going to do is, if you have a sunny day and you have all this power coming in, then you're going to have that anchor plant charge batteries. So but you need an anchor. And we're waiting for another piece of legislation in the legislature. Hopefully they vote on it tomorrow. This is the one that Dr. Ware was talking about. We need to build the 40 megawatts that again is going to help us get to that point. If we got what we wanted, what we were proposing, today you would be looking and we could say, with the price of oil going crazy, we can tell you, make it 13.5 cents. Because we'd be producing power from those solar farms. And that solar farm up in Marble, the 60 megawatts, you know how many rooftops that is? 7,000 rooftops. We only have about 2,000 some rooftop solar right now. That represents the equivalent production of 7,000 rooftops. And the only way people put rooftop is, we're not against rooftop solar, but there's only 3 ways that it gets on your roof right now. You're paying a lot in taxes. If you pay $30,000 or more in taxes, that the tax credit is, I think, still in effect, right? But it's going away. If you pay $30,000 in taxes, that's not what you earn, that's what you pay. Then you can take the tax credit, and then you can put it on your roof. Okay? This is just sorry, that's okay. But you know,
So Mr. Chair,
no, let me just finish. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is getting this solar contract with these providers. And there are so many thousand people out there who are coming to me and saying, can you get me out of the contract? Because I thought I was going to save money, and I'm not saving money. And I said, no, we didn't get you in the contract. We're not part of that. That's a sales pitch that you get. You bought it. They said, I have a lien on my roof. I said, that's not our problem. We didn't tell you to do that. The third way is to go to a bank and borrow money. And that's a very expensive way for homeowners. But they keep coming back at us. In 2 legislatures ago, there's a senator that said to me, we want this kind of solar community, this, that. And I said, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. You can't beat that solar farm in Marble at 8.5 cents a kilowatt hour. You can't beat that. So, I want you to understand, right here tonight, let's be very clear. We lose Cabras 1 and 2, we're load shedding. So we're doing everything we can to keep those two things running, and 8 and 9. But they're getting stressed out. 8 and 9 is very stressed out. When we lost 3 and 4, 8 and 9 had to pick up the load. We delay a little bit on this or that. You gotta keep them running. We ran everything else. All the other backup plants are going. So I'm really sorry, but I want to recognize the fact that 16 years ago, this body gave us the first green light. We've had so many green lights that we're trying to get through, okay? And I appreciate your support. The PUC has been very supportive, and we need that support because there's so many other naysayers out there. There are plenty of naysayers. Everybody can throw stuff, say, I'm gonna read this, I'm gonna say something. And for your information, what's out there on the road, out in front of us, is a GWA project. And that's to redo the sewer line that's going down to here. And that project should have been done 25 years ago. Because that's the project, Doris, I don't know if you remember, that every time, once in a while, there'd be a collapse of the road. And so you'd have to go in and redo it. It's asbestos concrete pipe. Sewage is so caustic, it ate away the pipe. There's some portions where there's no pipe, it's just coral. And when the heavy trucks run over it, there it goes. So we need your help with GPA, we need your help also with GWA. Because GWA is not done. So many people come up to me and say, oh, we're done, everything's good now. No, you know this city of Agana? We need to replace every water pipe in the city of Agana. And all the valves. There was a place right down here, right where the Chamber of Commerce is. There was metal. It was a valve that went out. And when we replaced that valve, you don't have just metal pipes. Some are asbestos concrete, some are metal. You've got a mishmash. After the military started building, they didn't care. They did a job fast. So there's a tremendous amount of stuff we have to do. Nobody likes to hear me. When I said by 2024, we're going to come very close to putting $1 billion in the ground already. And we're going to start the next billion. Nobody wants to hear that. But I'm going to tell you something. If you don't do it, we're going to screw up our aquifer. We're going to continue to pollute the ocean. Until we put in the agate centered ether plant, we were polluting the ocean off of agate, I can tell you. I went around when I got on the PUC in 2009, I went around, there were 7 sewage treatment plants. Everybody know where they are? 7. No, now we're down to 6. We took Baza Gardens out. There are 7. And we were polluting the ocean. I went and visited all of them. When I talked to the guys down in Agate, they said, Mr. Duenas, on a good day, we're polluting the ocean a little bit. On a heavy rain day, we just opened the valve and we let everything go. All the sanitary napkins, everything that people put in the toilet, it's out in the ocean. And that didn't end until we finally built that plant at over $60 million. Commissioner Guerrero was there with me when we built that plant. And you needed to do it. So I'm sorry, I'm going to shut up because I think I'm taking up too much time. I'm going to shut up.
Joey,
And
we need a little more passion out of you.
I'm sorry. Well, Pete knows me, and we haven't gone to lunch lately, but he knows I'm very passionate. We don't always agree, but we do talk.
Thanks, Joey.
I do have a question of the chair. When is the solar farm, the 8.5 cent one, going to be operational?
They're actually delivering power right now.
They're doing the
Maine
testing.
They're doing testing right now, testing and commissioning. So I expect by May for them to be fully operational.
And they can tie into the right too.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they're
it's-
currently tied in, if you know how they came up the hill and right around to the right, across the road to Mini Level Substation. So what they're doing now is, and probably for the next month or so, they're testing, which means they tested all the rest to make sure all the inverters and everything are there. And then they'll commission it, and so by May, we should have full output going through there.
What about storage of that?
So no, what they
The
have is
battery's
they don't have
fine.
any battery storage, but they do have batteries that are just to adjust the frequency.
For the intermittency, when the clouds come over.
So because it only runs during the day, then what happens? Will you be able to absorb it?
No.
The base load, come on, ma'am.
The base loads will provide power. If at night, those plants won't contribute power to us. And it's the third phase that we're going to put on, the one on the military land. That's about 50 megawatts. That one will have batteries that we charge and then discharge at night.
That can work.
That can work.
So you're not funding that for the 60?
No, because that wasn't designed for it. We were trying to get them built as fast as possible, and the batteries there are strictly to take care of the up and down. Because when we first built the first one and that one, it was going up and down and killing us.
What about the second one?
Well,
Will that have battery?
no,
The second
second
one,
one
ma'am,
is-
is the one that the chairman was talking about on base. So
No, no,
this,
the
No,
second
no,
one,
I'm talking, there are two.
They're 260 megawatts.
They're
The other
260
megawatts
there's
is
one
the
in
one-
Dundan, so that's the second 60 megawatt plant will be the Hanwha plant in Dundan.
Done.
The
Yes.
first 60 megawatt is the Kepco Solar in
Marble.
Manila,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
connected to the
Manila,
Plaget
okay.
substation, correct? And
So
then
which
the-
is first again?
The Manila one is going
Is
to be the
first,
first one.
that's the one you're talking about, will
Right.
come on, hopefully.
Hopefully by May.
in May,
Yeah, and the second one will be Dan.
correct?
Okay,
And then
and
the
neither
third-
one of them have battery storage, other than,
Not for
only,
storage.
only to levelize.
Yes, only for the,
For
correct.
intermittency.
But
And we-
the third one is the one that's going to be on military property, and that's the one that's going to have batteries that we can store and discharge at night. That's the one that was protested. Again, not by the number 2 bidder, but by the number 3 bidder. But you know, the protest, right? We have to go, we got the OPA to the protest, we have to go to court, and they can take you to court anytime they want. I'm sorry, I'm taking up so much.
Okay, everybody, let's get back on topic.
Yes.
So any other comments regarding this particular docket, or is there a motion? Pedro?
Before you move on to this other,
Oh,
I think it's appropriate that I recuse on this because the plan the Kipco is not part of this document. There is no discussion of Kipco.
thanks, Mike. So Mike is recused from this. Pedro, go ahead and make a comment.
Closer.
Yeah, the discussion tonight is about firefighting. And we've got so many tools now. Hardwood, solar, 40 megawatt, a Travis, maybe, the timing for the overall, and then shut it down and all that. 5 million bucks. Then we will have what, 5 megawatt. And once this, one thing I know about power is peaking plant will be shutting down once the solar panels are online. Because they operate in the day, the peaking plant will have to shut down. Okay? We fit it into the distribution and transmission of the circuit. So we don't have a peaking problem. But the generators will shut down, cool off, then they start up at night again. But there's so many tools, and the timing to me is, you have 1,000 things that can go wrong. There's nothing guaranteed. You're gonna load shed, we load shed, we load shed. That's the way it is. And it happened before, and I stopped it. I bought in 10 megawatts of generator from somebody else. But that's what maybe we need to do. Instead of trying to fix 60-year-old generator. Thank you.
Pedro, I don't believe the Marble solar plant is there yet. It represents maybe
I
12.
mean, once the Marble solar comes online.
And we all know now that Cab 1 has been down for a while. It's also a fertile plant.
I know,
And we have a reserve margin of about 30 megawatts.
yes, but have we ever load shedded yet?
Well, we've been very fortunate so far.
No, the system is there. We've got some spare generators on island that we don't want to use. And it's called Navy generation. They're willing to help according to the contract. So that's 25 megs.
No, I
So,
believe,
you know,
I believe it's 18 megs.
Okay,
I don't
whatever.
even know if that plant is operating. Is it operating there? It is?
But what we did do when the when the PD unit went down is we turned on all of the water system diesels, and that produced about 5 megawatts. And then the Navy was able to supply 6 megawatts. That's it. So we did that so we would avoid any load shedding.
Right.
But that's only done for a very limited period of time. Like I said, they worked 24 hours to get the PD plant operational again, because even the water system diesels, those are portable units. If you run them nonstop, the next typhoon, it won't work because they're not designed to be a prime unit. So, I mean, we did what we could. We got what we had to from the Navy for a day or so, but even them, the contractors that they have, they work 8 to 5. So of course, when we ask them to produce it during peak hours, they have to pay overtime, right? And it's not that they can't, but that's not their purpose in life. We supply the power. We don't ask for them unless it's an emergency. So, I mean, I don't know what other power plants that are available on islands, but we've used everything we can when we have to. And we'll certainly do that till KRS 1 is fixed. But other than that, we would never call on water system diesels or the Navy units, because that's not how our contract with them works.
Thank you, Grant. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. We have a system that's barely holding together at this point. Until we get the new power plant up and running, we're probably risking load shedding at almost any point in time. And I don't think that's a risk that most people would be willing to take. Is there a motion?
Linda's not here as AGMO, but I think what they did is they scheduled that so that they have time for Tamis to bring in the workers from Taipei, with the processing of the visas and all the rest of that. And then we wanted to make sure that the diesel conversion was complete by the end of July. So if that was delayed a month, we don't want to, have folks lined up here with the materials. I mean, they brought in a lot of materials already for the KRS 2 overhaul. But I think they just wanted to schedule it that way so that, there's sufficient time in between the other overhauls, and if something else goes wrong with another cabin street, they can fix it before they come out cabin street.
Before Cabras went down, Cabras 1 went down, what was it, running at 15, 16?
No, even though they're nominally rated at 66 megawatts, I don't think we've gone above 55 megawatts in the last couple of years. And the reason for that is it's called derating. And the reason for that is what they found out is if it goes up any higher, then they tend to have more boiler tube leaks because it's old. And so they just like even the PD units that are 44 megawatts, they don't run them past 40 or 41 megawatts. And those are 25 years old versus almost 50 years old. So those are just derated, and that's all they get out of them. Cabras 2, I think around 50 to 55 megawatts.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I just want to thank you on the comment that you made about you guys asking the Navy to come online and TWA to come online. See, that was never said. I want to thank you for saying that now. Now we know.
Well, and the reason why is we only do that if it's an absolute emergency. Very costly to run those units, and so that's all we need.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve GPA docket 2207.
Joe's second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pedro, are you nay? And Mike is recused, so the motion passes 5-1. Next item is GPA docket 2209, petition to approve the contract award for merchant services for GPA and GWA. We have an ALJ report and proposed order. Fred, this is you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. GPA requests that the PUC approve the award of a contract for merchant services with First Hawaiian Bank both GPA and GWA. The merchant services provided by First Hawaiian Bank would enable the acceptance and processing of credit and debit card customer billing payments for GPA and GWA at their payment facilities and online. Originally, in the procurement for this matter, the Guam Solid Waste Authority was also included, and it will still receive services, but the reason GPA has not included it in its motion is that the amount that it will cost Guam Solid Waste is below the contract review threshold, so you, as commissioners, don't need to review the solid waste portion of this. You might recall that in GPA docket 2108, the PUC authorized GPA to issue a procurement for the merchant services. And of course, that contract provided, or that bid provided for a one-year contract for the merchant banking services with option to extend for 4 one-year periods. There were 3 proposals received. An evaluation committee of the GPA found that First Hawaiian Bank's proposal was the most comprehensive and acceptable. The Consolidated Commission has approved the award for these merchant banking services to First Hawaiian Bank. The cost will be approximately for GPA $600,000 per year and $3 million for 5 years. And for GWA, $350,000 per year and $1.75 million for 5 years. GPA indicates that the rates they've been able to get from First Hawaiian Bank are really special utility program rates. There's one Visa utility program and then a MasterCard utility industry program that provides lower interchange rates for utilities. First Hawaiian Bank can offer credit card payments with Visa cards. Now, this was not the case in the last contract of merchant services, so that's an improvement. GPA states that they will save quite a bit of money on this contract as opposed to the old one, about $1 million for GPA per year and $220,000 per year for GWA. First Hawaiian Bank will provide all the implementation services for these contracts and the equipment at no charge to GPA. The fees which First Hawaiian will charge are set forth in an exhibit that I attached to the report. CFO Kim has also provided information spelling out the costs. So basically, for Visa and MasterCard customers, it'll be 75 cents per customer, $1.50 for commercial, and a transaction fee of 0.2% per transaction. And there's a debit card charge, and then what they call a gateway fee, which is 9 cents per transaction. The contract that GPA and GWA will enter into is attached to the report as Exhibit 2 and pretty much a pro forma standard contract. I should note that there are no charges to the customers. These are all charges that GPA and GWA will pay. The PUC previously determined in docket 2108 that these services are beneficial to both the utilities and their customers. Credit card payments of utility bills have increased substantially in the last few years. The wide availability of merchant services to customers helps to ensure that the utilities are promptly paid for the services which they provide. The reduced costs of such merchant services have increased customer usage of credit card and online payment of utility bills. I find that the award to First Hawaiian Bank is reasonable, prudent, and necessary. The cost of the services being less than that under the prior contract. My recommendation is that you approve the award for contract services and authorize expenditures in the approximate amount of $600,000 per year and $3 million for 5 years for GPA, and $350,000 per year and $1.75 million for 5 years for GWA. I've submitted a proposed order which approves the award and authorizes the announcement.
Thank you, Fred. Graham, any comments on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. LJ's Shrekie's report was very thorough. What we got from First Hawaiian Bank this time was we have both MasterCard and Visa. Before, I think we only had MasterCard for that, so that limited, we didn't want to limit what folks could do. But as you see, the fees are really for utility services rate, which they have in the States. We managed to achieve for both MasterCard and Visa now. Phenomenal, 0.2% plus small amount of fees. Your normal fees for credit cards are 2.9% and up. And so this allows us also now to offer to commercial customers as well. Before we did not because at a higher rate it'd be very, very expensive. But that's allowed us to do it, both online when a customer calls in to the phone services and everything. So it's very beneficial. Fortunately, if the CFO were here tonight, he'd tell you how great it is for him. And also, we were able to bring, GWA and solid waste, even though they fall below the limits for filing a petition here, they will benefit from this as well. And I think solid waste needs all the, financial help they can get from that. So I think it's a very beneficial program, and it allows us to offer more credit card uses instead of incurring, very high fees.
Thank you, Graham. Any comments from the commissioners?
Hey, Graham, just noting on the charges for consumer, 75 cents. You mentioned that 2.9% was what typical credit card usage is. And so basically the average rate is at $25, $26 around there. At 2.9% would come up with that 75 cents. It's 2%. Do you guys have any kind of minimum as to when they can use a credit card? Like, is there a minimum purchase on it? If it's $10 bill, you'll accept it.
Whatever the bill is. I mean, we're not limited under this contract. It's whatever the flat fees are, the 75 cents or these. I think the debit cards are even cheaper when they swipe that. So it's whatever their bill is. Now, I would say on the power side, unless you have perhaps solar and you just need to pay the $15 customer service charge. I mean, as you're aware, the average customer is 1,000 kilowatts. I think that's 28 cents kilowatt now on average. That's around $280. I think most of the bills are going to be more expensive than that.
Right. So on the power side,
yes.
On the water side, typically water bill is $40 maybe.
Well, I think you need to look at your thing. Yeah. I mean, if you have sewer, I just tell you personally, it's.
This is, you guys are lumping in on solid waste as well, right? So
Yes.
That's a $35 charge.
Yeah.
And they're going to be on the same rate plan.
Yes, it's the same rate plan as us. So each agency has its own separate account for that, and they get their separate machines to charge them and everything.
I just see that guy.
Anybody else?
Currently, the existing, you can't use a Visa.
Yeah, it's the Visa that you can't use.
So you can use, but you can't use a Visa debit.
Well, no, you can use it. It's just we get charged a higher fee because we didn't have the utility services rate for that.
Okay, so people can still use Visa.
We can, but obviously we're trying to steer them towards the cheaper one before when we only had one. So now that we have both, they can pick and choose whichever one they like. And we've also expanded to commercial now that we have both of them, and the rates are still fairly low. At one point, I don't know if you recall, the rates were so high that we completely eliminated commercial because it was too expensive. Somebody charges $20,000 and.
I remember when revenue tax was doing it at one point, and then they switched their plans, and then they were charging these fees to the consumer use of credit cards.
Right, and that's actually, from our understanding and talking to the folks, it's actually illegal if you are a user of MasterCard and Visa to pass the fees on to the consumers. But, so we've never done that. I mean,
Well, they don't do it anymore, road tax on use.
no, they only did it because there was a break during COVID.
Right.
So they said that's a special deal, and obviously when it's over, they'll,
So they're illegal.
well, I cannot offer advice on what the government does, but we have never added fees onto the thing, because that, our understanding is that's illegal for a merchant that uses Visa and MasterCard to pass the fees on.
I appreciate the, video of the visa that they sell. So for many consumers. Thanks.
Graham, you put a limit of $500 on commercial like that.
Yes.
So is that still gonna stay?
No limit. No limit.
Somebody does.
I think that might be GWA then.
For credit card payments.
But on the power side, we don't have a limit for that.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
That's great.
So it's GW, somebody has a limit, because every time I go through, when I pay my bill, I hear that limit.
Do you have a poll?
No,
$500?
no, it's for commercial, no, it's for commercial customers that there's a maximum of 500. So is GWA, no,
He doesn't know. He can't speak that. They're not GWA, so I would tell them not to say anything.
Yeah, but clearly for power, no limit for either commercial or residential.
all right.
Is there a motion? Motion to approve. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Does that,
Next item is GPA docket 2210. Petition of the Guam Power Authority to approve a bond issuance to refinance a portion of the outstanding 2012 revenue bonds. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Can you hear me all right? Although I'm not holding the microphone. Thank you. This matter comes before the Commission on GPA's petition to refund the 2012 Series A bonds. The new issuance will be the 2022 Series A revenue refunding bonds, forward delivery. The PUC has jurisdiction here under the contract review protocol. All debt obligations, as well as bond uses or issuances, are reviewed by the PUC under the contract review protocol. Prior to filing this petition, GPA worked with a team, including Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the underwriters, GPA Bond Council, and GITA to pursue strategies for reducing debt service payments. GPA believes that they may be able to refund the 2012 Series A revenue bonds for interest rate savings. Debt service savings from the issuance are expected to result in potential savings to ratepayers. GPA submits that the bond refinancing will lower debt service costs and provide a net present value savings to ratepayers and is reasonable prudent and necessary. Much of what the PUC has done historically on these refundings is to make sure that all the proper approvals have been granted for the refundings and that the procedures are all properly carried out. In that vein, here the CCU did approve this bond refunding. They approved all the bond forms necessary, such as preliminary statement, escrow statement, disclosure statements, etc. All the proper forms, including the 8th supplemental indenture, were all approved by the CCU. Most importantly, this bond issuance is authorized in Public Law 3680. The Guam legislature expressly approved the issuance of these revenue bonds by the Guam Power Authority, including but not limited to on a forward basis for the purpose of refunding all or a portion of its currently outstanding 2012 Series A revenue bonds. And the public law also requires review and approval by the PUC. I've always felt in looking at these that the legislative approval is very important. And if the legislature authorizes the funding, that is kind of an important hurdle to overcome. And that thereafter, the PUC, to some extent, must certainly take into view approval in the public law. The legislature authorized the funding because the interest rates at the time that it was considering the refunding looked possibly good. It could result in savings to ratepayers. There are a number of limitations in the public law. I'm not going to cover them all, but limitations such as on the aggregate principal amount of the refunding bond. The refunding bond must discharge all the obligations of the prior bond. The final maturity on the refunding bonds does not exceed the final maturity of the latest maturing then outstanding revenue bonds. I should point out, by the way, this refunding is a little bit different than some of the others, where the refunding bonds had the same maturity as the prior bonds. But here, I'll explain this in more detail. GPA opted to extend the maturity on the existing bonds for another 10 years. So the refunding bonds, instead of being paid back in 2022 to 2034, will be paid back by 2044. There's one provision that the Commission will recognize, and that's after this bond refunding is done, GPA has to come back to the PUC and get approval for the uses of the savings from the bond. This was just the case as it was in 2018 when GPA refunded the 2010 Series A bonds. At that time, the PUC, as it did in docket 1811, will have the opportunity to review the use of the savings by GPA, and we'll need to concur with the proposed use before it will be approved. All of that is included in this public law. PETA's approval is also required, and that was given, I believe, on March 16th. I have a section in the report where I tried to analyze the impact of these bonds, and I had the assistance of Mr. Kim, CFO. Commissioner Brooks knows I'm not an accountant, but I do my best to try to analyze what the impact is here on this bond. And we had a couple of documents that were provided to us. One was the March 16th funding update by the underwriters, Bank of America as well as Fargo. From that, it appears that GPA selected what's called a level debt service option. It's not really level exactly, though. It front loads savings for the period of 2023 to 2030. And the refunded, the first part of the refunding will be about $12.4 million in savings for those 6 years. And thereafter, these savings will be closer to 6.4, 6.5 million. But front loading is the important part. Why is GPA suggesting this? As you've heard tonight, the new power plant will come online, the EOD plant, in 2024. And the costs of that plant are going to be around $600 million. So GPA is thinking, and I believe they've really done this to try to assist ratepayers to not have to increase rates, to have these savings coming in from this reissuance that will be used to help defray the costs of the new power plant. GPA has articulated that this refinancing method, the front load savings, is the preferred method to again extend the maturity for another 10 years through 2044. It's intended to create more savings, as I pointed out, in the initial years of the building of the Oakadu power plant. Previously, GPA estimated again 600 million, and these savings will be used to pay for those costs. Forward delivery bonds, by the way, needs a little description. I think that's something that's a different twist on this particular issuance. The bonds will first be priced on April 13th, and then a true interest cost will be locked in for up to a 90-day period. So the actual closing won't be until July. But the purpose is to shift risk away from GPA to the buyers of the bonds. So apparently the buyers will assume risk of anything that occurs, such as increased interest rates during that 90-day period. Now, we had a more recent update by Bank of America Securities on March 24th, and unfortunately, the terms of the issuance aren't quite as good now because interest rates have been increasing. The original update of March 16th indicated savings around 14 million per year for that first 6-year period. Now, the savings, as I indicated, are down to about 12.4 million per year. The all-in total interest cost was 3.9% in the March 16th update, but now is 4.05%. CFO Kim has provided some of his analysis on this refunding, and he stated, I'll read his opinion. Overall, the refunding of the 2012 bonds is good for GPA and the ratepayers of Guam. Cash savings from refunding is 114 million from 2022 to 2034. This equates to a 2.9% rate savings to the ratepayers, meaning that this is the rate GPA will have to ask for if the refunding is not done. And that complies with what GM Benevente has told you previously in our meetings, that he designed this refunding as one of the tools to try to avoid a rate increase. I think that also confirms what Mr. Kim is saying. And he compares the refunding kind of like a mortgage where the balance of the loan becomes lower. There's more cash payment in the end under this proposal, that's true, but there are net present value savings at 7.37 billion. Now, again, Commissioner Brooks and I were trying to look at this best. I'll just define it in a general way. That is to meet the 2% savings. So the refunding bond must have at least 2% savings over the prior bonds. And here, Bank of America has indicated that the savings are 2.8%. That's the 7.371 million. What they've done to arrive at that is they use a discount price. So money spent now is more valuable than money you spend down the road. So they have a discount rate of about 3.562% that they have applied to all the savings, the annual PV savings. And also they have another PV factor depending on the year when the savings are earned. So the farther out you get to 2024, there the PV factor goes down. Overall, what they've done is they've simply applied those discount factors. They've totaled up all the annual PV savings from the refunding, and that's at page 2 of their most recent update. And they add up everything for the approximate 20-year period. And that's the savings in the initial years, but also the extra payments that have to be made in the last 10 years of the bond. And that's where they come up with the savings amount overall of 7.371 million. Now, why that's important is that figure would comply with the legislative requirement that there be the 2% savings. So in my mind, on that critical point, assuming their savings calculations are all correct, that they have met the requirements of the bond. In my mind, then, GPA has provided an adequate justification. These savings will be used to benefit the ratepayers, and there are savings, again, that comply with Public Law 3680. As I mentioned, the savings of the refunding bonds appears to be 2.84%. So again, Public Law 3680 is complied with. I already mentioned the allocation of savings, and that's in the Public Law too. And in the order it provides actually that within 45 days after the bonds are completed, GPA will have to file its petition. That's so within the 90 days, the PUC can complete its review, and then the PUC and GPA are obligated to advise the legislature. As part of my review, I also reviewed all the bond documents that were submitted to me. Those included all of them: the preliminary statement, the escrow agreement, the bond refunding agreement, the disclosure agreements, the 8th supplemental indenture. I've reviewed them all. I have reviewed them in a number of previous bond issuances, so I find them to comply with the law and to be in accord with the documents that were previously filed by GPA in other cases. As to the true interest cost, as I indicated, right now the all-in true interest cost for the bonds will be 4.05%. But one thing we've learned from the past is you can't always tell by what it appears to be now what it'll actually be after the bonds are refunded. We found in 2017, with the 2010 refunding, that actually GPA did quite a bit better on the true interest cost. They were able to beat their estimates, so we won't know that until the prices are locked in April. Specifically, the PUC, as part of the order in this case, has to approve the 8th supplemental indenture. That's the new indenture that's written specifically to authorize this series of refundings. There are a few restrictions put into the PUC order. Of course, GPA has to meet the 2% matter. In 2017, we actually had some very strict requirements. That year, it was a whole year where GPA had filed a lot of petitions. PUC had denied a few, but finally in December of that year, the PUC approved the issuance. We had a savings limitation that the refunding had to obtain so much savings per month. But I felt that here, based on the information, perhaps that wasn't appropriate to put into this order. But there is a limitation on the true interest cost. So I, in consultation with bond counsel and with the underwriters, I wanted to set a level of interest that if they can't beat that, it just wouldn't be a good issuance. They came up with 4.5%, so that is in the order in this case. They have to achieve at least that. It should be a relatively easy standard to meet, but that was the thinking, and I felt it was important to have some restriction in the orders. So the proposed orders, there's really 2 orders. One is just the order approving the long-term debt order, which is attached, and it contains the 2% requirement, the requirement about GPA coming back to the PUC, about the savings. That's the order. And then the order approving long-term debt goes through the history of the senior bonds in 1993, these refunding bonds, the 8th supplemental indenture. As I indicated, you will approve the 8th supplemental indenture. That is attached to the order approving long-term debt. And it also includes the true interest cost restriction that the bonds, the true interest cost shouldn't exceed 4.5%.
Thank you, Fred. Is it 4.5% or 4.22 for the true interest rate?
That was changed. In the original that I believe I sent into the commission, I had that, but on further discussion, bond counsel wanted to check with the underwriters, and the underwriters, being conservative, wanted to raise it. But I thought that was reasonable because you never know exactly what you're going to face when you're going to price the bond. So at least there's some restriction there on a very unfavorable bond.
Graham, any comments?
Thank you. LJ Harecki has done a very thorough job in reviewing this. I think we've been consistent from the very beginning with the general manager and everything. The new plant, what they call the capital lease portion of it, is approximately $37 million. So all of the money that we save on this certainly, and it is front loaded. I mean, we haven't, certainly the legislature had took quite a while to discuss that with us and ask us why we did that. It's front loaded and the maturity is extended, something we haven't done in the past, but in consultation with the underwriters, we felt that achieving the savings in the first 10 years, even though it's decreased a little bit, it was originally 14 million. Now it's approximately 12.4 million for six years, I think, and then the last 4 years are 6.6 million. And so our intention is that those savings would offset any needed increase for the an additional 37 million, and we hope with additional savings, from when other plants are retired and all the rest of that to achieve that without necessarily going in for a base rate increase. So we think that the bond refunding that we've done here, the reason we're actually doing the forward approach to do it now is because I think it was last week the Feds did a 1/4%, 25 basis points increase. Even though that's kind of priced into the pricing, as the underwriters explained to it, it looks like the Feds will increase the interest rate going forward. And so for this 3-month period between April and the actual refunding in July, the bond buyers are taking the risk of any additional interest rate increase. So we've, back and forth with ALJ Harecki and ORC, has been bond counsel for Guam for the last 40 or 50 years, and the underwriters, we've done our best to structure something that's achievable. I think even in 2017, when the savings were quite a bit less, when it was priced, there was a good market for the bonds that are out there. They wanted GBA debt, and so we got better savings than they expected. Of course, the bond counsel, the underwriters counsel are very conservative. So in their preliminary official statement, they don't want to promise something they can't deliver. But other than that, the GM and the CFO, John Kim, are currently with 2 other commissioners doing rating agency presentations. Feedback I have is those have gone very well. They've gone to all 3 rating agencies, so we should know soon, I think in the next week or so, what the rating agencies think of us. So far, it's gone very well. And then the pricing would be 2 weeks from now. And then that pricing will be locked in, and then actually the actual transaction takes place in July for these bonds for the refunding.
Thanks, Graham.
Graham, just or even Fred, when you were talking, I remember in 2017 we did put a limit on it on when they were out there because of the fluctuations that could happen. And those fluctuations could impact the amount of savings that we were expecting to see. And so you mentioned 4.22%, and then now it's at 4.5%, right? So our threshold in the order is at 4.5% interest rate. So anything above that, they cannot receive the bid. At the 4.5%, if we hit that, are we still within that 2% threshold? Legislature, are we still at 2.8?
Yeah, they have to.
The 2.8 point.
They have to be both.
Percent savings is.
Yeah.
The margin is still that's 0.4, right? So.
Right.
So at the 4.5, I just want to make sure we're still within that.
Yes, we have to meet both of them: the 2% net present value savings plus the Plus the 4.5.
Not just the 2%, but I mean above it, right?
Yeah.
We're still expecting to do the 12 and so forth, right?
Right.
So and that's based on maxing it at 4.5.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. It was 4.22 before, but we changed the order to 4.5
In the final.
to give them some
change
room,
to
some wiggle room
4.5
when
based
they're
on
out there.
underwriting.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Doris?
First of all, I want to thank Fred for trying to help me walk through all of this. I had several emails back and forth. And at the end of the day, for me, as I closed and said, it's still clear as mud. What's happening. What bothers me about this refunding is the fact that we've extended the maturity 10 years in order to what we've done is we're paying at X every year, but now we're going to pay at Y, which is lower, to help the cash flow. But over time, with the 10-year increase, okay, the actual cash outlay is more. Okay, and that's the part that bothers me. The actual cash outlay over time, and you say it in the report, 382 million versus 410 million. Now, net present value, I've never really understood, even in college. Okay, and net present value, you can play around with it. You can play around with it depending on what discount factor you use. If you raise your discount factor, you get greater. If you lower it, you get less. So that, and again, that's a judgmental call. But what I know, these are revenue bonds, not on the assets, correct?
Revenue bonds, yes.
Okay, but still, when you look at GPA's financial position, and I'm taking the 9/30/2020 financials, because I don't know yet if your 9/30/21 has been issued. And usually, even though this is revenue bonds, thinking of it slightly from a different perspective, GPA has total debt of 561 million. And utility plant is 478 million. And also your net position, your total net position is only $1.5 million. That's the part that really kind of scared me. As big as you are, to have a net equity of only 1.5 million, because your capital investment is a negative 12 million, and your unrestricted is also another negative. So overall, for a company so large to only have net equity of 1.5 million, really kind of bothered me. And what in essence we're doing is, yes, we're lowering the debt service but we're extending it 10 more years. So in effect, from not playing around with net present value or any of that, over time, we're outlaying more cash in order to have these full savings. So that's the part where not been able to wrap myself around this. Even though we might get a lower interest rate to help us, but the mere fact that we've extended the bond 10 years, no amount of savings is going to recover the real true net cash outlay against those savings. And you're kind of like, and I understand we need to lower, because of Oakwood, but the end result is, I can't find in my head where the savings are coming from. I asked, how did you calculate this net present value, and how did you calculate the 114 quote savings? That's the part that I'm still trying to wrap myself around.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks, at least if I can address one thing, as ALJ correctly noted, the total overall payments difference between this and that one, it's $28 million. So for an additional 10 years, we'll be making $28 million of payments. That's less than $3 million a year. So that's just using actual cash figures with no relationship to anything else for that. So
It's not a savings, it's a cost. It's a
no, it is a cost, but we're able to get the front loaded for the first 10 years just by adding an additional $28 million in total cost for the last 10 years.
What's the savings up front then?
Yes.
Is it higher, is it
Well,
higher
the
than
fact that
20?
they're lowering the.
Oh, no, the savings up front, I mean, is the,
It's 114 million.
right, 114 million over the first 10 years. So
I didn't know how that was calculated. I couldn't come up with how it was
So
calculated.
for the first 10 years, it's for the first 6 years, it's at 12.4 million, and then the last 4 years, it's 6.6 million per year.
That's on page 2.
So it comes out to $147
Page
million.
2 of the.
Yeah,
Right,
the
and
last couple
so
of
that
columns,
cash,
savings are all indicated.
yeah, that cash savings is achieved by $28 million for the last extra 10 years on the back end. Nothing to do, that's just actual cash, nothing to do with the discount rate, nothing to do with net present value. And then the table was on page 2 that had the net present value savings. All that is from 2022 to 2044. They sum up the entire total of the column, right? And that results in a net present value savings of 7.5 million approximately. And so as you'll see on that table, you got the first years that are all a positive savings, and then the last 10 are negative savings. So, it's clear that, the last years are a cost to GPA, but it's offset by the front loading of the 114 million. That's what we're trying to achieve. And that is obviously the only reason for extending the maturity, because if you recall, there was option 1 and option 2. Option 1 was just leave the maturity the same. And that resulted in a savings at the time, at least when we were at the legislature, it was only $4 million a year, right? So, and only for 10 years, right? And so that time, the option 2 was a $15 million savings. I mean, the savings were a lot higher because the interest rates were lower. And so it was $11 million a year difference times those 10 years. So there was a very substantial amount of savings for that time.
So if I remember correctly, I think it was, so the reason for the front loading was, so we're gonna save all this money up front over the first 10 years. We were gonna use that from a consumer standpoint, and for a stakeholder standpoint, ratepayer standpoint. We were trying to prevent the rate from going up.
That's correct.
Again, the new plant and all the solar farms are up in line, and we're running at 13 cents, and
Right.
further that comes in, so it kind of offsets some of that.
And then hopefully there's load growth to
So
accommodate that.
we're basically buying time
You're buying time.
to prevent any kind of rate shock.
Yes.
Anything else?
There is not.
The savings.
There a motion?
Yeah, move to approve docket 2210.
Pete makes the motion, is there a second? Pedro's the second, all in favor say aye. Doris, are you an aye?
No.
You're an nay. Okay, the motion passes 6-1. Pedro, you're an aye, right? All right, I'm buying you dinner after this.
Pedro's saving us money. Pedro's in for saving money, he's not in for spending money.
Next item is GPA docket 2205, PUC review of the levelized energy adjustment clause. Pursuant to tariff Z, we have an ALJ report and a proposed order. Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This matter comes before the PUC in Tariff Z, pursuant to Tariff Z. Tariff Z, and I kind of briefly like to cover its provisions. That's really what governs the determination of the LEAC, who's empowered to determine the LEAC, and the relevant provisions. Tariff Z is the levelized energy adjustment clause. it provides for a calculation formula for each customer bill. And there's a fuel recovery charge formula. It is the PUC, of course, that determines what the fuel recovery charge is. The formula involves the PUC determining what the projected fuel expense is for the next LEAC period. PUC determines the estimate of how many barrels of fuel will be used. It determines the expected total power requirements for the entire period. So everything within tariff C is geared to the power and authority of the PUC. No other body or entity is really empowered to do anything about LEAC, to change LEAC, to approve a certain LEAC rate. The power is vested entirely in the Guam Public Utilities Commission. There's a special provision for changing the LEAC within the 6-month period. You will recall there have been many occasions on which the PUC has changed the LEAC within the 6-month period. In many instances, it reduced the rate, but there have been others in which it increased the rate. There are two circumstances presented in tariff C as to when the PUC changes LEAC. One is when the cumulative under-recovery balance is more than $2 million during the 6-month levelized period. If the PUC doesn't do anything with the fuel prices tonight and raise the LEAC, there is going to be a $32 million under-recovery at the end of this 6-month period. Not just the $2 million mentioned. You know, the $2 million figure is interesting because I believe, honestly, the purpose of the LEAC clause was to prevent under-recoveries at all. So if our system were really working the way it should be, there wouldn't presently be a $22 million under-recovery. There would be no under-recovery because each period the PUC should set a LEAC factor that covers all the fuel costs arising during that LEAC period. Unfortunately, the PUC is confronted with the fact that a present under-recovery is somewhere around $22 million. It's impossible at this point to recover it all at once. But one thing the PUC can do for sure is to prevent a further accumulation of the under-recovery balance. I believe that's the obligation of the PUC in this matter, to prevent a further accumulation of the under-recovery balance. I wanted to stress the point, again, that under GTA's figures, it appears that if you did nothing tonight and just allowed the 18-cent factor to remain in effect for the rest of the LEAC period, the under-recovery at the end of the period would be $32 million, which is an increase of the current requirement of $17.5 million under-recovery. In other words, a $14.5 million under-recovery in this period. And certainly that satisfies the other test in tariff C, that if the under-recovery balance grows by more than $2 million, the PUC can come in during the interim, and the language is clear in the LEAC. It says the charge may be adjusted to recover the deficit. Those are the powers of the PUC. I believe the PUC has to remember that it is in charge of rates. GPA doesn't set rates. The CCU doesn't set rates. Under our Organic Act, the PUC is an independent rate-setting authority with the full authority to set LEAC rates and other rates involved. And the PUC has been set up with this responsibility, mainly because the legislature delegated the power to the PUC. Rate setting is typically a legislative function, but originally, the PUC, after its creation in the Organic Act, was vested with full rate setting authority by the legislature. That includes LEAC, of course. I believe that the PUC has to be mindful of its primary role and responsibility to make sure that rates are set for LEAC that will prevent the under-recovery from growing in this period. I want to focus your attention on Exhibit 2. Exhibit 2 is the chart attached to the ALJ report, and it's styled GPA proposed LEAC rate. So these are the calculations of GPA that they have submitted. And you will see in the first column, they're looking at the pricing that you were considering in January of this year before you set the rate for February 1st. The fuel pricing in effect then was from January figures. And at that time, the 18 plus cents was estimated to end up this period with a 17.5 million under recovery. However, in March, the PUC requested for myself to the CFO and counsel of GPA for the updated figures. That's what is done in every LEAC proceeding. GPA is asked to produce the updated figures, the 5-day average, at least 10 days before the PUC meeting. And that's what GPA did there. So these are their figures that they submitted to the PUC for consideration. And it shows that based on the new pricing, first you will see that their average price per barrel of RFO and diesel has increased considerably. If you look down at the LEAC factor, if you left the LEAC factor at 18 cents, it says right there in black and white, there's going to be a 32 plus million under recovery at the end of this period. If you look at the third column, that's what figure, what LEAC factor would be needed to maintain the under recovery at 20 million. Now, let me explain that. The under recovery you authorized in starting February 1st for this period was 17.5 million. But actually, GPA's calculation here is based upon 20 million. So that, in effect, is already a boon to the ratepayer, because that means in this period, if you accepted the figures here, that the ratepayers don't have to pay for an additional 2.5 million. In other words, the under recovery allowed was 17.5, but now it goes up to 20 million. So that's an additional under recovery already added into the balance. So that's a benefit to the ratepayers. But in any event, you look at that column and it shows that you will need the figure of 20 cents, 20.9522 for the LEAC to maintain a $20 million under recovery. So that's what you would need in this period just to maintain the under recovery rate, not to capture any of the 20 million that's already owed. And that's the figure that John Kim, the CFO, submitted to me. GPA also talked about possibly delaying an increase until May 1st. That doesn't seem to help the ratepayer much. If you do that, then on May 1st, the increase would be almost 22 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what you get by delaying it a month. You don't create any real leeway for the ratepayer. You don't do anything positive for the ratepayer. So what kind of concerns me, I have to say, is that GPA and the CCU, looking at these figures, decided not to make any recommendation about what the PUC should do in this regard. Figures are self-evident. They speak for themselves. They show that action is required for the PUC to deal with this huge increasing under recovery problem. I will also note that Chairman Duenas at the CCU meeting stated that the CCU provides the PUC with recommendations for the regular 6-month adjustments. But he further indicated that when, during the LEAC period, such as now, generally, midterm corrections are not something that GPA would initiate, but it provides information to the PUC, and then it's up to them. I want to state that the PUC does have an obligation under Care C to determine whether the current LEAC factor is adequate to recover GPA's actual fuel expenses during this LEAC period, and certainly to ensure that the under recovery balance doesn't grow anymore. A 32 million under recovery, by the way, would be an increase in the under recovery in this LEAC period of 82%. It brings the under recovery, it would, to the highest levels ever of under recovery. There has been 32 million under recovery before. This would equal it, possibly even exceed it. And if fuel prices go even higher, you could double the under recovery in this period. The PUC has never said that a $32 million under recovery is acceptable, and it has always taken steps to mitigate that under recovery. If the PUC performs its proper function under Care of Z in determining the fuel price and what LEAC factor is necessary to prevent further increase of the under recovery during the LEAC period, it really has no other choice than now to substantially increase the LEAC factor. I want to point out, I know the question has come up, well, GPA and CCU, they haven't requested any increase. I believe that's completely irrelevant. Neither the PUC nor the CCU has any role in determining LEAC or deciding what the LEAC factor will be. It is only the PUC under Care of Z that has all the power and authority to establish and approve a LEAC factor. Furthermore, there's nothing in Care of Z that even suggests that the PUC can't address LEAC unless GPA raises the question first. That's not a part of LEAC. And GPA and the CCU aren't regarded as being authorized in Care of Z to approve the LEAC factor. So I feel that the issue of a GPA request is really irrelevant. And Chairman Duenas has confirmed that GPA does not usually, during interim LEAC proceedings, during the 6-month period, make recommendations. My recommendation is that the PUC increase the LEAC factor to 20.9552 cents per kilowatt hour on meters effective after April 1st. And again, the necessity for that particular factor is set forth in Exhibit 2, which was GPA's own calculation. The proposed LEAC factors in Exhibit 2, by the way, those were the result of the update that is always done when the LEAC is examined by the PUC. So that figure is in accord with the standard process. The PUC always uses that calculation of the 10 days before the meeting and then the 5-day average before that. The delay of the increase until May 1, again, doesn't really seem to help ratepayers. It's going to even require a greater increase. And if fuel prices keep going up, it will require even more of an increase. To show you really what's been going on, in less than 2 months, we're talking about February 1st is when you established the 18 cents. We're not even 2 months beyond that yet. You know what fuel prices have done in the last 1 month and 2.5, 3 weeks? The high sulfur fuel costs have increased by 30%. The Singapore gas oil 10 ppm, which is equivalent to diesel, has increased by 40%. And I've been following the prices even up to the present day. They're still very much in line with these figures. There have been a few fluctuations here or there, but basically this is the kind of increase we've been talking about in the 2 months. So the PUC's role is to determine a price for fuel, that is the fuel recovery charge, that accurately and adequately reflects the cost of what GPA is paying. Now, GPA and the CCU had a number of kind of stated justifications why they weren't going to take any action. I don't find that any of them are reasonable or convincing. One was that, well, fuel prices are volatile. Well, let me ask you this. When are fuel prices not volatile? We can't predict exactly what's going to happen in the next 6 months. But that's the whole purpose of LEAC. It's a projection. Care of Z states that it's a projection. So using the best information available, which is the Morgan Stanley update for late March, the PUC determines a factor based on the best information available to it. And that's the way it's supposed to be. It's always a projection. And we always realize that fuel prices are volatile. And if they're volatile too much in one direction or the other, the PUC can always then readjust the LEAC factor. But saying that prices are volatile, that PUC shouldn't take any action now, or the GPA doesn't want to recommend, or the CCU recommend action, that's not a plausible rationale failing to take action. There were a number of other rationales given that GPA can tolerate the cost, it can afford the cost now. Those are completely irrelevant. That's not what LEAC is the duty of the PUC to set the price where GPA will recover its fuel cost during the LEAC period. It doesn't matter if they have other funds they can afford it with, or if they tolerate the cost. These are all irrelevant factors that the PUC should not consider. I want to urge that the PUC carry out its functions under the Organic Act, under the laws of Guam, to independently determine what fuel prices and factors should be here. And that's really what's required in these circumstances where, unfortunately, fuel costs are just increasing and increasing. My recommendation then is that the PUC increase the factor to 0.209522 a kilowatt hour for meters read after April 1st. This will prevent further growth in the under-recovery balance and the need for PUC to increase the factor if action were delayed until May 1. And I also want to indicate, even if fuel prices went down over the next few months, there's still a $20 million under-recovery. So setting the LEAC a little higher now would then make an inroad in the factor over the next few months. So I don't see that as a losing situation. It's unfortunate, not a happy event for the ratepayers, and I do note, I noted in my report, it's about a 10.31% increase in the total bill, and about $28 for the average customer. But that's what happens when fuel costs rise. Look at the gas prices. Same point, when gas prices go up, the price at the pump goes up. And in effect, the PUC kind of acts like a gas price regulator in the context of the fuel surcharge. It's supposed to set the price based on the price of fuel. That's the main consideration. Well, I have an order. The order would basically implement the LEAC factor that I discussed, and I've also indicated the other level of customers, the primary service, the transmission level service, etc. Those have all been indicated in the proposed order.
Thank you, Fred. Would GPA like to make any comments regarding this?
Yes, I agree with everything Fred has said, that the focus of this is the PUC. I want you to understand something. We didn't come up and say, by the way, this is what we want you to do. That we normally do at the beginning of the LEAC period. But I want to be clear, I support the recommendation of the ALJ. And it's not that I support this recommendation just for the fact of supporting it. Let me point out what we really need to focus in on. If we don't do this, we're going, and prices will even higher, we'll reach a point where will we be able to make a payment for the next shipment of whole. And if we start to not be able, will we delay shipments? If we start to do that, then we end up with the load shedding that we all want to avoid. So I want to tell you, I want to be very clear. I'll state categorically that I support the recommendation of the ALJ. So, it's not a question of, well, the CCU didn't do this, GPA. No, this is your role. I agree with this analysis, but I want to state that I'm here saying I support that. And it's very clear. He was very accurate that even if you put this rate in for April 1st, you're still going to have an under recovery at the end of the period. At the end of July, you're still going to have an under recovery. This is not to get rid of the under recovery, but it's to help kind of control it. I appreciate the ALJ's report in that regard. And my one fear is if we get to the point where we cannot, or we have to delay a shipment because we can't afford to pay for it, we're going to be in real trouble. So listen, COVID came and we all were stressed out. Iran invaded Ukraine. These are beyond our control. But we have to have the gas, like everybody else. If you want to run your car, you have to have the gas in your car. So I don't want you to think that the CC is going to step back and say, no, we don't support this. I do. Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. I think one of the somewhat alarming things in the report is looking at the difference between waiting just 1 month. We'll pump it up another penny. We have 4 more months left in this particular LEAC period. If we were to wait 4 more months to take any action, we'd probably be up around 25 cents kilowatt hour for LEAC. That's the highest it ever would have been here on island. That's about a 40% increase from where we're at right now. So by delaying any sort of action at this point in time, I think is a very, very dangerous thing. Nobody ever likes to see rate increases, but we have to somewhat keep pace with the reality of the market as it exists. So those are my comments. Doris, go ahead.
Sir, I've sat through a number of these LEAC discussions, and I'm beginning to wonder, is 6 months too long to wait to adjust the LEAC? How did we come around with 6 months? Because we seem to be doing more interim adjustments. And maybe, to lessen the pain, so to speak, or to shorten the pain, maybe a 3-month, we as a body need to consider looking at LEAC every 3 months rather than every 6 months. So my question really is, why did we settle on 6 months? Because we seem to be adjusting every 3 months.
Generally, they want to have a fairly predictable price so people can relate to that over a longer period of time.
Yeah, but
Doris,
we're adjusting every 3 months.
we can meet at any point in time, which is what we're doing here right now. So we're meeting 2 months after the last session.
But what I'm trying to say is people will know every 3 months you're going to have a change as opposed to every 6 months. But oh no, we're not going to wait anymore 6 months. We got to come back and do it every 3 months. That's kind of like where I see a little bit of inconsistency. If we do it every 3 months, you know, it's a shorter time frame, the amount of under, because it always seems that it's an under recovery as opposed to an over recovery. You know, is shortened, and, you know, by doing it and letting everybody know, every 3 months, expect a change in your power bill.
Well, I think every 6 months was the true up, right, that we do for the just to make sure.
I don't know.
To average it out
no.
based on the 6 months of the
All
previous
I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm just trying to explain that.
Yeah. All
Can I
I'm trying to
explain
say
a
is,
little bit?
you know, it's volatile times, but
Today is volatile.
when has it not been volatile? And by doing it consistently every 3 months, by doing it consistently
Fred.
every
So
3 months.
Commissioner Brooks, the way the power prices or the fuel charge used to be done was done by GPA, and it was done every month. That was before the LEAC process was implemented, I believe in the 90s. Chairman Duenas would probably know better than I exactly when. But 6 months was decided upon because the idea is to try to stabilize rates. Now, I agree with you, that hasn't worked so well,
Yeah,
but
that's not.
there have been discussions with GPA that I know I've had before about changing it to a 3-month period. But the problem with that is that we're automatically in a continuous LEAC process, because now, you know, they submit the LEAC petition in December 15th for the February 1st LEAC, and then by June 15th for the August 1st LEAC. So if we did it less than 6 months, we would be in a continuous. Now, I know lately, you're right, in these volatile times when the prices go way up and way down, there are a lot of interim actions, but probably it gives you more flexibility the way it's done in Tariff C, because a lot of times the 6-month factor has been good in the past. There have been, not recently, but there
Since my
have
time,
been
it hasn't been good.
many years that 6-month factors work pretty well. But the way the LEAC set up now, that's why in Tariff C it provides for this interim adjustment. So those are policy issues. My only concern was that then the PUC is constantly on just a complete ongoing LEAC review. And you're right, it does seem like it's been like that recently, but.
Well, or you could
but
change it maybe every 4. Well, my observation is the 6-month ain't working.
Doris, historically, there's been quite a few occasions when we modified it within a 6-month period 2 or 3 times. But we have the flexibility to do that. So I don't see what we would be gaining at all by having it every 3 months, quite frankly.
Well,
Because we
would
can do
know
that as a
every-
matter of fact right now if we want to.
We would know whether or not the under recovery is good or bad, and if it's good, I mean, if it's stabilized and it continues to, like.
Again, they're just projections.
My concern here, just from a consistency point of view, is we have not been consistent. If 6 months is supposed to be consistent, we have been very inconsistent. And I just would like for us to consider doing something every quarter. And if it means we don't change it, good. If it means we up it to recover, the amount of under recovery hopefully will be a shorter time period. But again, that's all where I'm coming from, is that we've been so consistently inconsistent.
Well, they're just projections.
And that's because the times are changing. The times are volatile, requiring us to be inconsistent. And that's where I'm saying,
Well, I could say
why don't we
I've been here for
consider
12 years and
just
have not
looking
been
at
this
every 3
consistent.
months,
As you
period, end of story?
When we came in and started to realize that we had, came in at a very volatile time for you to understand it, and understanding that within the 6-month period, we do have the ability to come in and do the adjustments. Whether we did it 3 months, there's still gonna be that volatility, right, that's happening, especially with what's going on now. So what you said, 3 months or 6 months. I mean, LEAC has been in existence since
It was never, I
I'd say in the first 5 years, it was, so 6 months was good. Yeah.
But that has proved,
I know for you,
that has proved
for you,
during my
for your
time,
last 2 years, right?
that has
Year,
proved
whatever it is.
inconsistent.
Right,
Because we
it's
seem to always be looking at LEAC.
because of the situation,
Yeah.
the geopolitics.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So,
these are factors beyond our control.
right, and so that, and
But what's
doing
in
it
our
every 6
control
months,
is to look at it more often,
well, every
So
6
that-
months is supposed to stabilize the things.
but we've
And
not been able, we've been
Correct.
changing it
Not-
every
not
3
in the
months.
last
And
year or
let-
so.
Tell the consumer, hey, every 3 months, your rate is gonna change. Period, end of story.
Well, for instance, if we waited 3 months in this particular
Well,
one, we'd
we're
have to
not
raise,
waiting, we're
we-
not waiting, and we're
Doris,
taking a change.
we'd have to raise it another cent if we waited an extra month, just for instance. So by waiting, it doesn't make the situation any better.
I'm not saying to wait, I'm saying let's do it more often.
But the timetable, it's not really a material point of discussion tonight. We're looking at the present circumstances we're facing right now. So we have to make a decision tonight on how we're going to deal with this problem.
And I'm saying that, I guarantee 3 months from now, we're gonna have the same situation.
Maybe, that's our job.
I'm not saying about the discussion, I'm saying going forward, why don't we look at it more often than 6 months? Because 6 months results in a
Doris,
very
We
large.
are looking at it, we're looking at it right now. What are you talking about?
I'm confused.
We're speaking brief.
Just for GPA, the activation of Marble solar panels. It's always read on the newsletter that they came in Florida, $50,000 savings a month. So, a day, $50,000 savings a day. So it doesn't offset that. And cost.
So hope eventually.
No, but it's gonna activate in when? April, May? So you got May, June, July. So,
And if that's the case, we come back and we readjust that down.
No.
We're still in.
we haven't decided yet to go to increase, whether they did.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Still
So-
have to discuss.
So, you know,
We're saying if we don't do anything now, it's 32 million.
several $1 million savings or avoided costs, I guess, you say. So, you know, the only reason why under recovery is so high is because the generation that's running in Guam right now, which is Ebido 1-2, is cost 35 cents a kilowatt. We sell electricity at 28 cents. So we already operating a power plant that's a negative in operation costs. So of course, your under recovery is gonna be more. So, you know, we gotta run power plants that are the right price. I understand being stable and I understand load shedding and all that. I've been there, done that. But you gotta run your power plant at the rate that the PUC gives you. Because if you don't, you're always gonna have millions of dollars over recovery. Or under recovery, under recovery. So, what you do? Look at the offsets. And right now, the timing is really not good. To increase cost of living in Guam. So I don't, you know, look at the power plants you're operating. If you're gonna operate a Debido power plant at 35 cents a kilowatt, and you're selling the power it produces at 28 cents. Give me a break, man. I'm not that smart, but that's not right, not the right thing to do. Maybe you should ask maybe and GWA to conserve more. You hold that emergency don't call that emergency, I call that common sense. They bought the fuel already. And the fuel price is determined when did John say in the meeting, April 15th, maybe we will be buying fuel again? It's not even, to see what the price will be in April 15th. It goes up real quick, but it can also come down real quick. So the avoided cost of marble being activated is almost $4 million. Just think about it. That's all.
Thanks, Mayor. Anybody else?
My concern is, Commissioner Bureau, is that if we don't do anything now, and we're at 32 million by the end of July, then, and let's say even if fuel prices stay the same, kind of average the same, then we're stuck with raising the LEAC to 24 cents, or 25 cents at that point, right? I'm not, and I'm also, I need some clarification on what you're talking about. We run a power plant at 35 cents, we sell it for 20.
Yes, we have 3 power plants that exceeds the sale of electricity when it operates. That's PDM 7, Gedino 1 and 2. And they've been operating lately because the Cabras power plant went down. So now you got this real expensive power generation system that it's operating the system.
So you're saying we're operating at 35 cents right now?
No, that's what Gedino operates at.
And we're only selling it for 28 cents?
Yes.
You suggested that we increase the price further to
No, I'm not, I'm saying,
Shutting them off.
no, make a decision if you're gonna use it. No, well, you got other generators that are not running. That's what it means, not all generators are running. Charge it, run the generators, run GWA generators, run Navy generators, because they operate at 25 cents a kilowatt. That's a choice, a management operational choice that GPA operators needs to make. Not the PUC, it's the GPA operators. And they're not, and that's the decision they make because they don't want.
Pedro, we already heard earlier this evening that the GWA generation, that's something that's for typhoons primarily as backup. That's 5 megawatts worth. That's really not a great deal of generation. And what the Navy has to offer evidently is about 6 megawatts. So that really doesn't solve any problems.
No, Jeff, I understand, Mr. Chairman. It doesn't. But it really makes sense to operate it for more than to operate G or David. David Park. That's what I'm saying. It's their choice. It's not for us to tell them what to do. They have to make a decision. You're going to operate David Power Plant at 35 cents and you're selling it at 28. I'm sorry,
I think everybody's aware that the generation fleet that we have right now is pretty old.
No,
Expensive to run.
They got other power plants. They got Tenjo Vista, Ningun, Calafofo. We only run them 4 hours a day. Run them. That's what they're designed to do. Then if they need to be shut down because of oil change and all that, that's what you do. There's no such thing as a peaking plant to me. I have operated power system under this stress and everything. You run a generator, and then when you need to oil change it or whatever, that's when you shut it down. Because they're designed to operate 24/7.
These are more
No,
management style
I'm just
questions.
talking from experience. I know.
And the GM, of course, the GPA.
Of course, I just go ahead and ask.
right now. So
This
he's
is
not
what
here
we do
today.
on typhoons. We just run generators until. So this is almost the same thing. It's a crisis. So you need to make decisions that make common sense, not engineer it to death. I'm glad they got generators, but they need to know how to operate it.
Anyone else?
I would just, I think it's a tough situation where we appreciate it if they're correcting. Keeping us focused on what our role is and what our job is. And reminding us that it's within our power to set boundaries. It's also, say it's within our power, it means that we have the decision, and it's not automatic. Formula that just automatically applies when a certain under recovery, we have to change the rates. It doesn't say shall, it says may. The reason that I like to hear what GPA thinks, I like to know what they think we should do. Not because I think that we have to listen to them, or we have to be required to see their input. You're right, it's not the CCU, it's not GPA, it's us. We have to make a decision. We have to factor in the impact it has on them. So, which is why I want to know how they do it, because no one knows more than they do, how much this impacts. We have to factor in the impact it has on the rate bill. So I don't think it's completely irrelevant to how they do it. That's why I always ask. On the other hand, I don't think that we have to base our decision off whether they ask. But there's a tough call that we have to make based on the impact it has on the ratepayer and the community. So I mean, I'd like for us to at least consider that there's another way that we can make it more gradual. 2 months into the 6 month gap period, 2 months ago we raised it by about 1 cent. Even though GPA didn't ask for this. Now we're considering raising it by almost 3 cents. We're 2 months into the period. Could we raise it by a little bit less than that? And then 2 months from now, or even decide now that we can phase it in, so that we raise it by 1.5 cents now, and 1.5, 2 months from now. So it's gradually stepped every 2 months during this period, which will still means that we are taking action and not allowing the current under recovery to grow to 32. On the other hand, we're not having as much impact on the recovery. So at the end of the 6 months, maybe we're not going to have get the under recovery as much as we could have if we were raising 3 cents today. But at least we're doing something that also giving the rate bearer a little bit more time to absorb. So that's another option that's not been suggested yet, but I would just like us to consider.
Thanks, Mike. You realize though that under recovery, 20 million was targeted by the regions. Well, we don't have their CFO here tonight. So we don't know what that would be exactly. So we lose a couple of months. I guess with the fall.
We were considering, February, effective in January. We have proposed, another amount. What was the amount? So it wasn't 18 cents, wasn't it at 20? Well, we were
I had a
adjusting
higher
this.
factor to fully recover, right? It's over 20 to fully recover
To
at that
fully
time.
At that time.
But I think, I believe I was recommending 18.1 cents.
Yeah,
Because at that time, that would stabilize. Leave an under recovery at 17.5 million.
Right.
So that was the amount necessary to prevent a further under recovery during the react period. At that time. So
And how much was that from the previous video? How much did it go up by?
17, I believe. It went from 13 to 15 to 17 in 3 days.
We did that every 2 to 3 months.
2 months.
Every 2 months instead of every 3 months.
Yes.
My
It was
quarter,
increased.
asking for quarterly is irrelevant. Asking for
Are we
quarterly-
back there again?
Yes, asking for quarterly is irrelevant. It makes no sense.
Since we're thinking outside the box, though, Frank, we did, when we were at 13, we were at 20. And then the governor helped out with some money and some funds and some CIP, I think it was what it was, and we dropped it down to $5 million, and we got it down to that 12.
Yeah, that was earlier.
That was earlier on, so we were able to use some of those outside funds to bring down that
That's
payoff
right.
factor.
That's right.
So is there a way to use, so is there a way to use any savings from the bond money to reduce the LEAP? I know, it's not, I'm just thinking outside the box. I know it's not what you want, but it's just,
I don't think the bond council
Throwing it
will
out
approve
there.
that.
Yeah, I can address that. From the bond indentures, that's not
Approve that.
acceptable. It has to go towards the infrastructure and
CIP.
papers.
it was a try, it was just a shot. Got it. Trying to think outside the box.
Yes, it's just, I would note that if we were to try and delay it further, I think, as ALJ Harecki noted, the 20.9 cents, if you wait even 1 month, it would go up to basically 1 cent more, almost 22 cents. So if you were going to phase it in, you'd have to have almost a 4 or 5 cents and then, do something every 2 months just to stay with the 20 million under recovery, because it's already up from 17.5 million. So you couldn't keep the same one, otherwise it was just 1 penny was 1 month just to keep the same 20 million.
I remember when it was $4 a gallon under the pump, and now it's $6.63. So I mean, that's
I
double.
think you're on premium, so.
Yeah, so so yes, it is necessary to raise it to try to catch up. I agree with that. So that's where I stand with it. Better to address it now. Later. Yeah. And the 10% is not so bad compared to like the 20%.
Well, and I think as ALJ Harecki noted that the price of fuels, on the projections are, well, actually it's already gone up 30% for the sulfur RFO and up roughly 40% for diesel. That's just in the last 2 months. So, yeah, and while it's gone up and down a little bit, it's still, kind of stabilized at quite a high rate compared to what we used to pay.
If we started at 20, that would have been the 3 cent increase back then.
So whether we did it 6 months or we did it every 3 months, maybe
We're gonna have to address it, I mean, more.
so. Mr. Chair, I move that we, go to AW's recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Peter seconds. All in favor, say aye. Royce is an aye. Mike's an aye. Peter, you're a nay. 6-1, the motion passes. Okay,
Let's brace for impact.
and motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Commission.
Thank you, everybody.
I got a question. I'm a consumer. Okay, I wanna know